Greetings and welcome to Growing Testimonies. We're here to discuss fixing people or myself. Oftentimes, in any type of relay or dealing with others, there's sometimes a difference of opinion, or there can be differences of opinion. With those differences of opinion, when we are in less mature states, we can have an opinion that this person is wrong based on thinking that we are right. And neither one of us could be wrong, and neither one of us could be right. And I challenge people to think about how big of a deal is the issue that we're trying to fix. Why do I view this person as being wrong? For example, I noticed when watching my children do things, I have a certain way in which I was trained to do certain things. So my initial thought is that my way is the right way. And I observe, especially my older daughter, when she does certain things, how she does it. And if it's a good idea, I'll, compliment her on that. But I also let her know that, well, based on this action right here or this outcome, it may not be wise to do it this way. For example, she would reuse the same water in the microwave when heating up food. And uh, I told her, I said, eventually, if you keep using that same cup, there's going to be a mold buildup because of the darkness and the moisture of leaving it in the microwave. And as an experiment, I let her see it happen. And she recognized that, it was good to try and recycle and reuse, which is a good thought. But some things we can't recycle and reuse. So, in terms of fixing people or myself, I had to allow her to experience the growth process to understand why this is wrong versus saying don't do it because I said don't do it, which can limit her thinking capacity or her desire to try new things. There was another example of using aluminum foil, recycling a piece of aluminum foil used to cook uh, morning sausage on it. And I said that's okay if you can rinse off, quickly rinse off, but if it stains and has food debris on it, it's going to attract bugs. So, she learned, but it the approach of allowing her to see the byproduct of, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying there are repercussions to the way you're doing it. Now, let's go into other relationships. When, let's say, with my mate, spouse, or what have you, I have a difference of opinion, and they may want to fold a towel a certain way, whereas you were raised to fold a towel a different way. At the end of the day, what difference does it make? It's an unnecessary argument. The whole purpose of the folding a towel is just so that it looks neat and presentable. So if a person wants to, fold it this way and this is with which they're comfortable, and even if your way seems to be more expedient in trying to help them do things faster, hey, that's okay. I even had a situation at work where a colleague was, I had set up a mail merge where these names would print out in order to be placed in a certain bag. So all these little slips had a start point and an end point. And the start point and end point let you know that this was the end for this little series of slips to go in this particular bag. And I tried to communicate that, but that it didn't appear that it was that effective in the communication because they just cut all the slips out at one time and then resorted them by bag. And I let them go through that process, and then on the next go round, I showed them. I said, I took a highlighter and highlighted the end points, And I said, if you look at all these names and this sheet, all these names in this series align with this sheet that goes to this, they go in this bin or what have you. And then they were like, oh, okay. But, at the same time, what they were doing, even though it was a longer process for them, it made sense for how they were working. And, at the end of the day, the whole point was, let's get the job done and not damage the relationship. So a lot of times fixing people creates walls which damage or hinder relationships in terms of how you approach the situation. On the negative side, I have seen and I've had experience with uh, people going tit for tat to try and fix somebody. And because you did this to me, I'm doing this to you, or because you holding this grudge against me, I'm gonna I'm not gonna do this, or whatever. Yeah, I mean, there's so many situations in which who do we really need to fix? And the majority of the time, we really just need to fix ourselves. You can not control anybody else. It's hard enough trying to control yourself. So in terms of fixing someone else, sometimes you may just need to have an attitude adjustment and respect this person as a unique individual. I read this book, Healing for Damaged Emotions, and it was a real revolutionary book by David Seaman. And he stated everybody has issues which stem from something from upbringing or experiences that they've had, good or bad. And just because this person has a unique expression in a certain way, that doesn't make them right or wrong, but it makes them have issues just like I have issues, just like you have issues, just like everybody has issues. So when we are so focused on this person did something wrong according to my perception of wrong, what then is our reaction to that? And that is the difference between fixing that person or fixing myself, to readjust my attitude to allow this person to have whatever experience of growth that they need to have, thus walking in love. More specifically, a lot of times we feel the need to fix others when we have the spirit of fear. And looking at the text above, 2 Timothy 1:7 reads, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind." So that walking in love is being patient with the other person while they're doing something that may be irritating to you. So that walking in love is enduring, 1 Corinthians 13. The patience, the kindness, the endurance. And also, don't be so fearful that you have an anger reaction to this person when it's not necessarily what they're doing is wrong, just because it doesn't agree to your paradigm at the particular moment. Moreover, that goes toward that sound mind. That sound mind says, I love myself enough to not care enough about this person that I have to make sure that they do this particular thing. I mean, think about having an older child who you just tried X, Y, and Z with, getting them through school, putting them in college, doing all this stuff for them, and they're still not being productive. Well, how much are you going to do for this person until you're going to allow them to do for themselves? And when they can take responsibility and ownership of what they're doing for themselves. And when we keep trying to fix it all the time, we inhibit growth, personal growth for that particular person. That's why a lot of times in anger management, people tell you to walk, the counseling sessions tell you to walk away. They say, don't be a log to be burned by constantly trying to explain yourself or trying to fix a situation or trying to fix the other person by, well, I got you on this and I caught you doing this and, you need to apologize for this. At the end of the day, what does it matter? Does it really matter that you caught them on something and they have to? I mean, sometimes it does. I mean, if you're in a married relationship and you catch your spouse entertaining somebody outside the relationship in a way that's inappropriate, yeah, you should call them on it and tell them, hey, this is not good, but how far are you willing to take that to try and fix the person? Are you going to be angry with them the rest of your life, even after divorce or separation, or whatever extreme you feel you need to go to show this person? Are you going to walk around with unforgiveness the rest of your life just because you got hurt? And does that hurt really reflect something going on with you that you sowed a seed for or spoke over that spouse, which, in turn is some issues that you should have dealt with before you got into that relationship, and that manifested in that relationship based on your fear. So when we are so bent on fixing other people, sometimes we need to look in the mirror and say, what's wrong with me where I have to have such a manipulative or controlling spirit over this person that I gotta fix them? Why do I care so much about this other person that I have to do something versus speaking over them and allowing God to heal that situation or reveal to you what you may have been looking at in a selfish manner. There's so many things that we can do in order to manifest a more loving relationship in terms of walking in love and having a sound mind, which that sound mind aligns with God's way of doing things, and being patient and kind and enduring and hoping the best of a situation instead of just, I got to go to the law on everything. I got to control you. I gotta make sure you do X, Y, and Z to make sure that I get what I want out of this deal instead of coming to a compromise. And I think sometimes we point the finger too fast instead of taking responsibility for certain things. For example, if you're hurt in a relationship, and let's look at some current day hurts. We have a lot of separated couples who have children. And who's taking responsibility for the hurt? Are you taking responsibility for your own hurt? Is the other person taking responsibility for their own hurt? Or they're pointing the finger and constantly blaming you and constantly trying to do things to demean you and hinder your progress based on their limitations? I tell you, it's amazing how many times people try and throw surprises of maybe, especially dealing with children, unexpected uh, uh, court cases, such as claiming back due child support when the person is paying on time, or if the person is paying, and then all of a sudden I want to automatic draft from your check, and I'm not discussing this, issue with you at all, or just doing surprising things like that that end up making a person lose their job or making things more difficult, and just not speaking about it early on to say, hey, I'm an adult, I'm gonna take responsibility for this. This is a change that I want, and at least first, before I take a certain action, an extreme action, let me communicate to this person first so they can have a heads up. But when you just do things, in a emotional manner where this is the way I feel right now, so I'm going to do this without any necessary provocation. I mean, even if you're trying to move on in a relationship or whatever it is, the case may be, or you're just trying to just hurt this other person because you feel so hurt. I mean, at what point do you take responsibility for your own hurt? I mean, at some point we have to grow up or become one of the walking dead in this world who just have no life in them because you're so busy trying to control other people's life. Take responsibility for your life. Do the things you need to do for your mental well-being and your betterment so that you don't have to keep living through your kids or living through other people and just opening up a lot of negativity every chance you get because you're insecure and incomplete within yourself. And the only way to get that completeness is establish a relationship with God. He wants you to have that relationship with him. And when you have that relationship, that's when you get Philippians 4:6-8, the peace which surpasses all understanding. I I've had some surprising moments in my life, and I tell you, I to get through those surprising moments, I fixed myself. I I I addressed the issue with the person where the confrontation arose, but I not necessarily internalized it, but I looked it back at myself and I say, hey, let's look at what the big picture is. The big picture is that you're not gonna do anything stupid. You you care for this person and you want to move forward in a healthy manner. So the bottom line was I gotta love myself enough to get back get away from this emotional state. We all have times of anger and hurt, but that is temporal. So God led me. He already knew what was going on based on the relationship I had established with him, and he even forewarned me of it. So I had work to do, so I occupied myself with that. I watched, some sermons online. I listened to some more sermons uh, through uh, online streaming, and by listening to those sermons, each one had a particular message, that ministered to me. And I'm a led by the Spirit type person, so I just press play wherever I was led to press play, and I let the sermons minister to me. And every one of them were great sermons. I tell you, T.D. Jakes has a great sermon on criticisms and uh, the ability to take criticisms from other people or really let it roll off your back like a duck. And instead of taking it in and receiving it, sometimes we have to learn, who are we for real? And you can go back to some previous shows for that, but you're made in the image of God. You're one of God's beloved children. And you have to keep reminding yourself during these battles of tests to fix yourself and not worry about fixing this other person, because that other person already got issues. That's why they come to you with their issues, or the confrontation arose anyway. And if you're the one initiating the confrontation, then you really need to check yourself and say, why do I constantly set out to attack this person? How much vengeance do I have to have? There's scripture, can't remember chapter and verse, but it says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. And he does deal with people. I have not seen one instance where somebody has wronged me unjustly. And not to say that I'm just a saint that can't do any wrong, but has come against me, and there hadn't been a humbling where they needed to come back to me for something, or they've either been demoted, transferred, lost their job, things like that, by coming against me, or at the very least coming back and saying, I'm sorry, apologize. I mean, today I had a coworker uh, get upset with me because I wouldn't sign a form based on some new information that was given right before I was asked, to sign off on this information, which I don't think they were paying attention. I heard it, so I communicated this to them, and they caught the attitude, and I was like, hey, I mean, I'm just trying to follow policy. And later on, I had this discussion with the personnel that made the policy at that particular moment, and that coworker, and they embraced me and was like, hey, I'm sorry, and I was just like, wow. And they did the requirement, and I went on and signed on it, and I was just like, wow. I told them thank you, because I was like, that really made me feel good for you to apologize, because a few years back you would never apologize, and your whole energy just changed, and we both walked away smiling, and I was just like, wow, that was just the grace of God to come through. And I I didn't challenge them, I just told them, I said, hey, I did, tell them, I said, hey, look, you get attitude with me, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to follow policy, and I left it at that. I didn't go any further with that. And they were still looking at me all cross or whatever, but when I came back around and saw them the second time, and had the necessary conversation with them, apology was made, and both our day were made. So I mean, that's that sound mind, yielding to the Spirit. So we both yielded to the Spirit. And if I didn't yield and I kept going on with it because I felt I was in the right, because they can't got the attitude of me because I'm trying to do my job and do what I'm supposed to do. You know, I, I would have lost a win-win situation for both of us, and we both would have, been at odds. And today was a lot of closure at work, because I had a second colleague with whom, we had like a fallout, several months back, and I just stayed consistent. I stayed consistent. I stayed consistent with speaking to him. I stayed consistent with being professional with them, and I stayed consistent with, I'm not paying attention to the problem we had. All I'm paying attention to is the productivity that we were hired to have for this company. And when I have to work with you, I'm going to make sure I'm cordial, I'm kind, I'm patient, and I'm very concerned about what you need from me to make sure that you're able to do your part in the job and things like that. And I sent him a email today because I knew, they were moving, and I knew of a property available, and I just sent someone, say, hey, look, this is the property address, this is the number, on the sign, I know you're trying to move closer to work, maybe this will help you out. And they were just like, thank you. And you know, I was touched because they said thank you. And this is coming after, some days of no communication, and they would say, I appreciate you, thinking about me. And, it wasn't nothing but the Holy Spirit, because, they told me that they were moving, this weekend or whatever. So, I was kind of in tune, again, led by the Spirit, but it was a win-win situation because they saw my true heart of concern for them and their welfare, and in turn, it turned their bitter heart to thank you and things like that. So when you just focus on fixing yourself and you doing the right thing, and removing yourself from the situation when you know you can't handle the emotional sensations that are going on, giving yourself time to calm down, do whatever breathing techniques you need to do, or anger management strategies that you need to do, that's when you're being patient. That's what patience is. You're trying to remain constantly the same with your interaction with that person. And if you're emotional and sensationalized at that point, it's it's difficult to remain patient with that person, because their breath is going to come out, and eventually words are going to come out, and other expressions, will cause different actions to move you away from God's true will for both of you all's lives. And it's very important to allow God to manifest through you, through being patient, through walking in love, through having that sound mind. Um, and that's being a peacemaker. That peacemaker versus the instigator. The instigator wants to go tit for tat. The instigator wants to dwell on the gossip, and every time they get a chance, stab somebody with, oh, I heard this about you, or what so and so said this, what you think about that, when it's negative, versus productive. And when you find yourself drawn to a lot of negativity, you really need to reflect on why. Who has trained you to have this type of mindset? Why is it so important that you have to attend to the gossip versus the gospel? I used to be into a lot of gossip at a young age, and I realized it wasn't good for me. And as I got older, when I went back into, talking about people and getting into these gossip groups, it would give me a headache. And I was like, you know what? This is not something I want to do. It even got to the point where I don't even like talking about anybody's business with somebody, a third party, whatever it is. So it just became a conscious thing with myself to just keep people's information confidential, which they choose to share with me, because it can always be turned to gossip. I may not have received something the way the person necessarily wanted to uh, uh, portray it to me, and my communication, especially after a misconception of what was being received, could not be effective to give the true picture, even doubly when I don't receive correctly. So, you know, when I say focus on the gospel, focus on the positive things, focus on good news, focus on those things that keep you lighthearted. That's living. Death does all things that are evil. And remember, the word evil is live, turn backwards. So it takes life away from you. It goes against true life. And that true life comes from God through Jesus. And when you allow him to manifest in you, you live the abundant life. I promise you that I just look at where I've come from and how God always takes care of me and makes sure that I don't just get the scraps of life and helps me to, do things. But if I don't walk in love, and it's not about living in a law, but there's just judgments already set up for certain lifestyles that you live. And when you don't walk in love and you keep going around with bitterness, you're taking the life away. God don't want to dwell with sin, even though there is grace. Grace, if there weren't grace from God, there'd be a lot more judgment on all of us out here. And when you learn to be patient and kind with people and be the peacemaker, you know, you allow yourself to keep living, sowing seed. When you do that, you're sowing seed to live in the abundant life and get favor when you didn't expect to get favor. And sow seeds to reap harvests of favor that no man could give or take away. I'm a living testament that you can do well no matter what state no matter what state you're in. I know how to abase and how to abound. Philippians chapter 3. Forget the past and press forward to your future. Um, press on to your future. Stop living in the past. Past mistakes are for your growth. Pain is pressure to help you grow. It's not to keep you confined in the prison of your mind with that pain. That's imprisonment. That's bondage. That's death because you're being limited when you keep dwelling on the pain and sores of your life. Think of a sore, it's a hurt. Think of mental sores, mental hurt. It's not conducive, it stunts you. That's why worry takes the life away from you. Moving forward, recognizing that everyone has issues, including yourself, your perfect self. Yes, you have issues too. Try to commit to changing. You're not going to become perfect overnight. You may never attain perfectness. However, you can become better. And progress is defined by the changing from where you are to doing things better and more efficiently and in a more loving manner than you did in the past. So your commitment to change should rest that I know God is going to work things out for me. Focusing on the promises. That's how you change. Focus on the promises that God had for you. Speak His word in the face of temptation and irritating or awkward moments, especially when feeling wronged or the need to retaliate with somebody or fix somebody. That is His sword, the spoken word, which changes you and the person with whom you're dealing with. Keep a confession list that you say on a routine, preferably a daily basis, so that you have a bank account of seed, which is God's word and promise, so that when things arise and you are not emotionally sound to respond in the right way, He can bring somebody in to remove you from the situation, interrupt that before it explodes, you know, bring a change without necessarily you having to do it yourself through His grace. I tell you, I had a situation where I recognized that I was less than for a woman who was communicating with me, and they were doing it. We had been friends for a long time, and she was attractive, but I really wasn't attracted to her. And there was some sharing going on, and I realized one of my weaknesses was when I started sharing with people, that attraction comes out. So anyway, I caught myself lusting, and I said, okay, I got to work on this. I said, okay, Lord, you know, you promised me my own wife. You promised me, what you said, never look at another man's woman. And I had to catch myself. And I said, when I started saying that, another colleague, came in, to the office and interrupted the conversation, which broke my train of thought. And because I was battling with it, and I kept speaking the word over. So that's when that other person came in and broke that situation. And I was like, wow, that wasn't nothing but the grace of God, which was fixing myself. I spoke the word over myself. I didn't move, because I know if I moved, I face a lot of judgment, just bad situation all the way around. So it's it's it was a good fight. It was a good fight on my behalf because I spoke his word and he came through for me by interrupting the situation. And it didn't always have to be something like that, but I'm trying to give you an example of how God will, once you speak his word over the situation, remove you, interrupt you, and help you change gears so that you don't keep that same vein. And sometimes we all need counseling. I went to counseling. I feel it was another person who had been through some things and had some successful practices, whereas I didn't necessarily know how to practice proper anger management, and I didn't necessarily know how to uh, differentiate between hurt, anger, and a lot of different negative emotions that are experienced, but to properly place them so that you can recognize I'm upset because I'm hurt. I'm upset because I feel wrong. I'm upset because of whatever. And then you can better channel it and say, well, if I feel wrong, what's that person's perspective on it? And I can look at this other person as this is a human being, who has emotions and all this other stuff. And think about as a child when you're reared, do your parents show you love afterwards and explain to you, before and after what's going on, why this chastisement, rearing, or whatever, how they express their correction of you as a child? Did they have a before and after the process so that you can feel love, so that they can help you balance those emotions instead of saying shut up and you better not I don't want to hear no more crying. Close your mouth. I don't want to hear it no more. He's just telling you to figure it out on your own when you were 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, and really don't even have a clue. You just learn how to express yourself a little bit and talk a little bit, and now I'm expected to manage these emotions that I don't even understand as a little child, and I'm just told to shut up and internalize it. And so we grow up as adults with internalizing a lot of emotions and not necessarily knowing what to do with these emotions. So I say, do a gut check. Do you need counseling? Are you finding that you can't grow from situations? Are you finding it difficult to walk in love? Can I, if you recognize that what you're doing yourself is getting you the same results, which are not positive or beneficial to the situation that you need fixed or remedied, then you might want to seek counseling from a different source. Send me an email. We can set up a time to entertain each other and find some strategies that may work for you based on the situation and the nature of your personality and things like that. And we have to respect ourselves as a unique creation and an individual who has feelings, expressions, and emotions, and we need to properly balance, manage, and understand these feelings, experiences, emotions, and where do some of these emotions stem from? Some of us were raped at a young age. Some of us were abused, you know, physically, sexually, mentally, verbally, etc. at a young age, which comes out in our adult life with raising our kids, with interacting in our adult relationships, with how we interact in adult relationships. So when you realize that how you're interacting in these adult relationships is not beneficial or not working to the promises of God, hey, step out, find somebody with some wisdom, not wit, some wise dominion, who has success in dealing with situations, who it has some credentials saying, I know how to deal with that, and I can show you how to deal with that. You know, experience is a great teacher if we're willing to learn from our experiences. Knowledge is good if we are able to understand how to apply it, evaluate when and where we should apply that knowledge. Once you allow yourself to continue to keep digging that same hole for yourself, it becomes a ditch of depression and difficult to escape, difficult to see the light because you're so far down in the hole. But I tell you, God can pull you out that hole as long as you hold on to Him and seeking Him. So I'll conclude with saying, who should you really be trying to fix? That person with whom you had a confrontation, or yourself? I would yield to say, fix yourself. You can't control anybody else. Even if it means you have to remove yourself from that space of that person with whom you're dealing. It's a choice. Choose life over death. Choose the abundant life, which doesn't have heavy heart of depression, because I realize I don't like myself so much that I have to put down other people to make me feel uplifted, that I have to subject myself to situations or self-soothing things that may not be conducive to a healthy life or lifestyle. Just because things are accepted norms in 2013, that doesn't mean it is the best and most conducive remedy for your situation. Fixing people often parallel with a lot of self-soothing practices such as emotional spending, overeating, emotional eating, uh, gossip, constant put downs, depression, a lot of negative things because you just don't feel right within yourself. If you need help, get it. If you want my help, I'm here. Just send an email. Thank you for watching Growing Testimonies today, and you have a super evening. Until next week.